The loud alarms echoed through the halls of the research station horizon. Red lights flashed on and off. Mason Wright ran through the corridors, his heart beating fast. He was a scientist who studied alien life forms. Today, something strange was happening. "All staff to safety stations now," shouted a voice over the speakers. "Unknown ship entering atmosphere." Mason looked out the large window. In the orange sky of Tarova 9 he saw it, a ship like none he had ever seen before. It was not human-made. The ship was falling fast, trailing smoke and fire. "Everyone stay inside," ordered Commander Laura Bennett. She stood in the control room, giving orders to the frightened staff. "No one leaves until we know what we're dealing with." Mason nodded like the others, but his mind was already made up. He had come to this distant planet to discover new life. Now new life might have come to them. He couldn't just sit and wait. While everyone focused on the emergency plans, Mason slipped away. He headed for the shuttle bay. The small research shuttle wasn't meant for rescue missions, but it would have to do. He climbed in and started the engines. "Right. What are you doing?" The commander's angry voice came through his communicator. "Return to the station immediately." "Sorry, Commander," Mason replied. "This is what I came here for. I have to see what crashed." He flew the shuttle toward the crash site. Smoke rose from a deep cut in the forest where the alien ship had landed. Mason set his shuttle down as close as he dared. He put on his breathing mask, grabbed his medical kit, and stepped outside. The heat hit him first. Parts of the forest were on fire. The alien ship had broken into pieces. Most of it was destroyed. Mason climbed over broken metal and strange materials he had never seen before. That's when he heard it, a soft sound like someone in pain. Following the noise, Mason found her, an alien woman trapped under a piece of her ship. Her skin was a beautiful blue that seemed to shine in the sunlight. Her face was almost human-like, but with high cheekbones and eyes larger than any human's. Those eyes were silver with no pupils, and they stared at Mason with fear and pain. "I'm here to help," Mason said, knowing she probably couldn't understand him. He showed her his empty hands to show he meant no harm. The alien woman tried to move but winced in pain. Mason could see she was badly hurt. Dark purple liquid, her blood, soaked her strange clothing. Moving carefully, Mason used a piece of metal to lift the debris off her. She watched him with those silver eyes, not fighting or running. Mason took out his medical scanner and ran it over her body. The device beeped with warnings. It couldn't fully understand her biology, but it showed that she was losing blood fast. He opened his medical kit and took out bandages and healing gel. "This might feel strange," he said as he applied the gel to her worst wounds, "but it should help stop the bleeding." To his surprise, the alien woman reached for something at her neck. It was a small device. She pressed it and it made a humming sound. "Danger," said a mechanical voice from the device. "They follow. Hide." Mason looked up at the sky, confused. "Who follows?" "Who's coming?" The alien woman pointed up with a shaking hand. Mason followed her gaze and felt his blood turn cold. 3 large ships had appeared in the sky. They were dark and covered with sharp angles, nothing like the smooth ship this woman had crashed in. The device at her neck spoke again. "Cricks. Hunters. Kill all." As if to prove her point, a beam of energy shot from one of the ships. It hit the research station horizon. Even from this distance, Mason could see the explosion. More beams followed, and the station that had been his home for the past year was destroyed in seconds. Mason made a decision fast. He couldn't leave her here, and he couldn't go back to the station. "Can you walk?" he asked, offering his hand. The alien woman tried to stand but fell back with a cry of pain. Mason didn't wait. He lifted her as gently as he could and carried her to his shuttle. Once inside, he laid her on the floor and jumped into the pilot's seat. The shuttle rose into the air just as one of the large ships turned toward them. Mason pushed the engines as hard as they would go, heading for the mountains in the north. If they could reach the deep valleys there, maybe they could hide. "Hold on," he shouted to the alien woman. A beam of energy passed close to the shuttle, making the whole craft shake. Mason turned sharply, trying to avoid the next shot, but the third beam hit them directly. The engines died instantly. The shuttle began to fall. Mason held onto the controls, trying to guide their fall. The ground came up fast. The last thing he saw before everything went black was the alien woman's silver eyes watching him. When Mason opened his eyes again, his head hurt badly. The shuttle was a wreck. Smoke filled the air. He tried to move and felt sharp pain in his leg. Looking down, he saw his leg was trapped under the crushed control panel. Something moved beside him. The alien woman was awake. Her wounds seemed less severe now. She was pulling at the metal that trapped his leg. "Thank you," Mason said as she freed him. Outside the broken shuttle, Mason could see they had crashed in a dense forest. Tall trees with purple leaves surrounded them. Strange animal calls echoed in the distance. The shuttle was destroyed beyond repair. His communicator was dead. The alien woman stood watching the sky. The large ships were still up there, searching. She turned to Mason and pointed at the dense forest, then made a walking motion with her fingers. Mason understood. They needed to move to hide. He nodded and struggled to his feet, ignoring the pain. Together they limped away from the crash site and into the unknown wilderness of Terova 9, the human and the alien, both lost, both hunted. Strangers from different worlds, now their lives depended on each other. Mason woke up to a strange tugging sensation. He opened his eyes and saw the blue-skinned alien woman dragging him by his arms. The wrecked shuttle was now far behind them. His head pounded with pain and his leg hurt where it had been trapped. "Wait," he said weakly. "I can walk." The alien woman stopped and looked at him. Her silver eyes studied his face. Mason was surprised to see that many of her wounds had already closed. Small blue scales covered the areas where she had been hurt. She helped him sit up against a tree. Around them, the forest of Terova 9 was alive with strange sounds. The trees had purple leaves that seemed to glow slightly in the fading light. Small flying creatures with 6 wings darted between branches. Mason had studied this planet for a year, but this northern region was unexplored. The alien woman handed him something. It was a piece of metal from the shuttle shaped into a knife. She had made more weapons too, a spear and something like a small axe. She had been busy while he was unconscious. "Thank you," Mason said. He touched the translator device at her neck. "Can you understand me?" The device made a humming sound. "Yes, better now." The voice was mechanical but female. "Fixed translator." "Learning your words, and what's your name?" Mason asked. "Nix Allah," she replied through the translator. "Warrior Sentinel. Void Strider Clan. I'm Mason Wright. Scientist from Earth?" He pointed to himself. Nixala nodded. She pointed to the sky where the 3 large enemy ships could still be seen, though they were far away now. "Crix, hunting me. Hunting my people. 3 star systems now. Why are they hunting you?" Mason asked. Nixala touched her chest. "Want what I protect?" The translator struggled with her next words. "Technology. Knowledge power." Night was falling fast. The temperature dropped quickly. Mason shivered. Terova 9 had extreme temperature changes between day and night. Without the shuttle's heating system, they would freeze. Nixala seemed to understand. She gathered fallen branches and arranged them in a pile. From a pouch on her belt, she took a small device and pointed it at the branches. A spark jumped from the device and the wood caught fire immediately. "You're prepared," Mason said, moving closer to the fire. "Thank you for saving me." Nixala sat across from him. "You helped first." As the night grew darker, strange glowing plants began to light up around them. Some were beautiful, with patterns of light moving across their leaves. Mason pointed to a particularly bright one. "Don't touch," Nixala warned. "Poison." Mason pulled his hand back quickly. "How do you know?" "Smell," she said. "Like plants on my world. Smell is danger." Mason was impressed. Her senses were clearly sharper than his. They would need those senses to survive. The next morning, Mason's leg felt better. Nixala had wrapped it with leaves that seemed to reduce the pain. She showed him which plants were safe to eat. Some tasted terrible but gave him energy. "We need shelter," Mason said, looking at the sky. Dark clouds were gathering. "Rain coming," Nixala nodded. Together they found a small cave in a hillside. It wasn't deep, but it would keep them dry. They gathered more wood for fire and large leaves to make bedding. The rain came hard and fast. Water poured down outside their cave. Lightning flashed across the sky. Some of the lightning was green, something Mason had never seen before. The storm lasted for hours. During that time, Nixala's translator continued to improve. She explained more about herself. "My people are Lumina," she said. "Very old species. Guardians of the network." "Network?" Mason asked. "Connects stars. Connects worlds." She made a gesture like a web with her hands. "Crix want to use network as weapon. Destroy worlds. Take power." Mason tried to understand. And you were sent to stop them? Sent to hide, Nixala corrected. Carry important knowledge. Find safe place. She looked sad. Failed mission. Led them here. Not your fault, Mason said. We'll find a way to contact help. Nixala shook her head. No help coming. My ship destroyed. Your station destroyed. We alone. The reality of their situation hit Mason hard. They were stranded on a barely explored planet with deadly hunters searching for them. No one knew they were alive. No one would come looking. Days passed. They established a routine. Nixala hunted with her spear, catching strange animal-like creatures for food. Mason gathered plants he knew were safe and found sources of fresh water. They moved their camp every few days to avoid being found. Mason noticed that Nixala seemed to always know when danger was near. Once, she suddenly pulled him behind a rock moments before a large predator passed by. Another time she woke him in the middle of the night just before a poisonous flying creature landed where his head had been. How do you always know? He asked her. Nixala touched her head. Feel things. Sense danger. She seemed unsure how to explain. Then she reached out and touched Mason's temple with 2 fingers. Suddenly, Mason felt a wave of emotions that weren't his. Caution, concern, protection. He jerked back in surprise. What was that? How my people communicate, she explained. Share feelings. Share warnings. Helps us survive. You're telepathic, Mason said in wonder. You can sense thoughts and feelings. Not thoughts, she corrected. Feelings, danger, safety. She looked at him curiously. You felt it. Most species cannot. That night, Mason couldn't sleep. He thought about what had happened. Humans weren't supposed to be able to sense telepathic communication. Why could he? Was it something about this planet? Or something about Nixala? The next morning, they were hunting together when Nixala suddenly froze. Her blue skin seemed to darken and Mason felt a wave of fear that wasn't his own. What is it? He whispered. Cricks, she said, her voice barely audible. Hunting party. Coming this way. Mason felt his heart race. How many? 3, she replied. Armed close, they had nowhere to run. The hunters would see them if they moved. Nixala made a decision. She handed Mason her knife. Stay here, hide. I lead them away. Before Mason could argue, she was gone, moving silently through the trees. Mason crouched behind a fallen log, gripping the knife. Minutes passed. Then he heard it, the sound of energy weapons firing. Shouts in a language he didn't understand. Unable to stay hidden, Mason crept toward the sounds. What he saw changed how he thought about Nixala forever. She was fighting 3 tall beings in dark armor. But she wasn't the same. Her blue skin had hardened into what looked like armor. Her movements were faster than seemed possible. She dodged energy blasts and struck with her spear, taking down one hunter, then another. The 3rd hunter fired a weapon that hit her shoulder. Nixala stumbled. The hunter raised his weapon for a killing shot. Without thinking, Mason rushed forward and drove his knife into the hunter's back where there was a gap in the armor. The hunter fell. The forest was suddenly quiet again. Nixala stood breathing hard, her skin slowly returning to normal. The wound on her shoulder was already healing. You saved me, she said, sounding surprised. We save each other, Mason replied. That's how we'll survive. They searched the bodies of the hunters and took their weapons. Mason couldn't use them. They seemed to require some biological connection he didn't have. But Nixala could. They also found a device that showed maps. They know this area, Nixala said, studying the device. Have been searching. We'll send more hunters when these don't return. Then we need to move, Mason said. Go somewhere they haven't searched yet. Nixala pointed to a mountain range on the map. There, difficult terrain. Many caves. Good place to hide. That night, as they prepared to leave their camp, Mason realized something had changed between them. They were no longer just 2 strangers forced together. They were partners now, and somehow in this dangerous wilderness that made him feel hopeful for the first time since the crash. A month passed since Mason and Nixala crashed on Tarova 9. They had made their way deep into the mountain range, finding a cave system that offered protection from both the weather and their hunters. Mason had lost track of days, marking them only by scratches on the cave wall. Their life had fallen into a rhythm. During the day, they hunted and gathered food. At night, they sat by their fire and talked. Nixala's translator worked almost perfectly now. She taught Mason about her people, the Lumina, and their long history as guardians of peace in the galaxy. My world is very old, she told him one night. "We discovered space travel when your people still lived in caves." Mason was fascinated. "And the Cricks? Where did they come from?" Nixala's face darkened. "Once they were like you, curious explorers. But they found ancient technology they did not understand. It changed them, made them hungry for power." She explained how the Lumina had built a network of transportation points throughout the galaxy thousands of years ago. These points allowed instant travel between stars. The Cricks wanted this technology to build weapons and conquer other worlds. "But why are they hunting you specifically?" Mason asked. Nixala was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "I carry secrets. In my blood. In my mind." She touched her chest. "The Lumina do not separate biology from technology like humans do. Our bodies are the key to our most advanced systems," Mason began to understand. "They don't just want your ship's technology. They want you." "Yes," she said simply. "I am the last sentinel with the complete genetic key to the network core. If they capture me, they can use my biology to access all Lumina systems." The revelation made their situation even more dangerous. They weren't just hiding to survive. They were hiding to keep Nixala's secret safe. That night, Mason had trouble sleeping. He kept thinking about what Nixala had told him. When he finally did fall asleep, his dreams were strange. He saw stars and pathways between them. He felt as if he was flying through space without a ship. When he woke, he could still feel the sensation of movement. "You were in my dream," Nixala said when he opened his eyes. She was watching him with her silver eyes. "Your mind reached for mine while you slept. Is that possible?" Mason asked, sitting up. "It should not be," she replied. "Humans do not have telepathic abilities. But you," she studied him carefully. "You are changing." Mason had noticed it himself. His senses seemed sharper. He could see better in the dark. He could hear animals moving in the forest from further away. Sometimes he felt emotions that weren't his own, usually from Nixala. "What's happening to me?" he asked. "My presence affects you," she explained. "Prolonged exposure to Lumina telepathic fields can change compatible species. It is rare, but it has happened before." She looked concerned. "I should have realized sooner. Is it dangerous?" Mason asked. "Not to you," she said. "But it makes you detectable to the Cricks. They will sense the change in you as they can sense me." This new danger made them more cautious. They moved deeper into the mountains, always alert for signs of Cricks hunting parties. Mason began to practice controlling his new senses. Nixala taught him how to shield his mind, how to focus his awareness. One morning, Mason woke to find Nixala already up and looking out from the mouth of their cave. She was completely still, her skin slightly darker than normal, a sign she was sensing something. "What is it?" he asked quietly, moving to stand beside her. "A large Cricks force," she said. "Not just hunters, warriors, many ships landing to the south." Mason felt a chill. "They're not giving up." "No," she agreed. "They are determined. They will search every part of this planet until they find us." They packed their few belongings quickly and headed higher into the mountains. The terrain was rough. Sharp rocks cut through Mason's boots. The air grew thin, making it hard to breathe. But they kept moving. By midday, they reached a high pass between two tall peaks. From there, they could see much of the landscape below. Mason gasped at the sight. Crick's ships moved across the sky like dark birds. On the ground, lines of armored figures spread out in search patterns. "There are hundreds of them," Mason said in disbelief. "They want the prize badly," Nixala replied grimly. She pointed to a valley far to the east. "We go there. Dense forest. Many predators. Cricks will be cautious there." They traveled for 3 days, moving only at night. During the day, they hid in whatever shelter they could find. The journey was exhausting. Food was scarce at this altitude. The weather turned cold as Terova 9 moved further from its sun in its unusual orbit. On the 4th night, as they descended into the eastern valley, Mason felt Nixala suddenly grab his arm. Her skin had gone dark blue, almost black, a warning sign. He immediately dropped to the ground beside her. Seconds later, a Crick scout ship passed overhead, its searchlight scanning the trees. They lay perfectly still until it passed. When they finally moved again, they stayed under the thick canopy of trees. The eastern valley was as dangerous as Nixala had predicted. Strange predators lurked in the shadows. Plants with teeth grew along the forest floor, ready to snap at anything that touched them. But these dangers also kept the Cricks at bay, giving Mason and Nixala time to rest and recover their strength. One evening, as they sat in the shelter of a hollow tree, Nixala took something from her belt pouch. It was a small crystal glowing with soft blue light. "What is that?" Mason asked. "Memory crystal," she explained. "Contains coordinates. Secret places. Lumina safe worlds." She held it out to him. "You should take it. If I'm captured, you must keep it safe." Mason didn't take it. "We won't be separated. We'll stay together." Nixala smiled slightly. It was the first time he had seen her smile. "You are brave, Mason, right? But not realistic. Odds are against us." "I don't care about the odds," he said firmly. "I'm not leaving you, and you're not getting captured." She studied him for a long moment, then put the crystal away. "Very well. Together, then." That night, Mason's dreams were more vivid than ever. He saw a structure made of crystal and light, buried beneath the ground. He saw pathways of energy connecting stars. When he woke, he found Nixala already awake, looking at him with surprise. "You saw it too," she said. It wasn't a question. "A building," Mason said, "made of crystal underground." Nixala nodded slowly. "Not just any building. A Lumina citadel." Her voice was filled with wonder. "I thought they were all destroyed or abandoned. But there is one here on this planet. How is that possible?" Mason asked. "Humans have been on Terova 9 for years. We would have found it." "It hides itself," Nixala explained. "Waits for Lumina presence to activate it." She touched her chest. "It sensed me, and now it calls to us." "Where is it?" Mason asked. Nixala pointed northeast. "Not far. 2 days' journey, perhaps. It could be a trap," Mason warned. "The Cricks might be able to sense it too." "Possible," she agreed. "But if it is truly a citadel, it would have defenses, protection, maybe a way to call for help." They debated what to do. Staying hidden had kept them alive so far. Moving toward the citadel would be risky, but remaining in one place was becoming more dangerous as the Cricks expanded their search. "We go to the citadel," Nixala finally decided. "It is our best hope." They set out at dawn, moving carefully through the dense forest. Mason noticed that his new senses were growing stronger. He could feel the presence of animals before seeing them. He sensed dangers in time to avoid them. Sometimes he even caught glimpses of Nixala's thoughts, not words but images and feelings. Their journey took them across a wide river with water that glowed faintly blue at night. They passed through a field of giant mushrooms that released clouds of spores when touched. Each step brought new wonders and new dangers. On the second day, they found unusual rock formations, too regular to be natural. Ancient pillars worn by time but still recognizable as the work of intelligent beings. Nixala touched one of the pillars and closed her eyes. "Lumina made these," she said. "Long ago. This planet was known to my people. Why would they come here?" Mason asked. "The answer waits in the citadel," Nixala replied. "We are close now." As night fell, they climbed a steep hill covered with blue grass that sang softly when the wind blew through it. From the top, they could see a perfect circle of trees in the valley below. The trees were different from others on the planet, taller with silver leaves that caught the moonlight. "There," Nixala said, pointing to the circle. "The citadel lies beneath those trees." They made camp on the hillside, planning to approach the circle at dawn. As they sat by their small fire, Mason felt a strange sense of coming to the end of a journey. "What will you do if we find a way to contact your people?" he asked Nixala. She looked at him, her silver eyes reflecting the firelight. "Return home. Continue the fight against the Cricks." She paused. "You could come with me." The offer surprised Mason. "Leave Earth? My own people?" "You have already changed," she said simply. "You may never fully belong with humans again." Mason thought about it. A month ago, the idea would have seemed impossible. But now, after everything they had been through together, after the changes he had experienced, he wasn't sure where he belonged anymore. "Let's find the citadel first," he said, "then decide what comes next." They slept side by side that night, their minds touching in dreams, sharing visions of crystal spires, and the circle of silver-leaved trees glowed in the early morning light. Mason and Nixala approached cautiously, alert for any signs of Cricks. The forest was unusually quiet, as if the normal creatures of Terova 9 avoided this place. "The entrance should be at the center," Nixala said, her voice low. "If this citadel follows the pattern of others." They moved between the trees. Mason noticed strange symbols carved into the bark. They seemed to shift and change when he wasn't looking directly at them. "What do these mean?" he asked, pointing to the symbols. Warnings, protections. Nixala traced one symbol with her finger. This says only those of the light may enter. The light? Your people? Yes, Lumina means light bearers in your language. She continued walking. These trees are not really trees. They are sentinels watching for threats. Mason looked at the trees with new respect and a little fear. Will they let me pass? I'm not Lumina. You carry some of my essence now, she replied. The bond we share may be enough. At the center of the circle, they found what looked like a small clearing. The ground was covered with silver moss that sparkled in the sunlight. Nixala knelt and placed her hand on the moss. It began to glow brighter, responding to her touch. Stand back, she warned Mason. The ground trembled. The moss pulled away, revealing a spiral staircase that descended into darkness. Cool air flowed up from below, carrying strange scents that Mason couldn't identify. Nixala's skin glowed faintly, providing enough light to see. They descended the stairs, which seemed to go down forever. The walls around them were smooth crystal that reflected Nixala's glow, creating patterns of light that danced as they moved. Finally, they reached the bottom. Before them stretched a vast chamber with a high ceiling, supported by crystal columns. The floor was inlaid with metal that glowed with blue light when they stepped on it. The light spread outward from their footsteps, illuminating the entire chamber. It recognizes you, Mason said in awe. Yes. Nixala looked around, her silver eyes wide. This is truly a citadel, and it has been waiting a very long time. They explored the chamber. Strange devices lined the walls. Some looked like control panels, others like maps of the stars. In the center stood a raised platform with a crystal pillar. Nixala approached the pillar. This is the core, the heart of the citadel. She placed her hand on it. The crystal glowed brighter, and patterns of light raced through the floor, up the walls, and across the ceiling. The entire chamber came to life. Holographic displays appeared in the air. Strange symbols flowed across them, too fast for Mason to follow. Nixala watched them, her expression growing more and more surprised. What is it? Mason asked. What does it say? This planet. She struggled to find the words. It was not randomly chosen. By either of our species, she turned to look at Mason. This is a seed world. A what? A world prepared by my people long ago. A refuge. She pointed to one of the displays. There are 12 such worlds. Hidden, protected. Places where the Lumina could rebuild if we ever faced extinction. Mason tried to understand the implications. So your people came here thousands of years ago and built this place? As a backup plan? Yes. Nixala moved to another display. But there is more. Your people, humans, did not find this planet by accident either. She touched the display, bringing up images that looked like DNA strands. You were guided here. Guided by whom? By this. She pointed to the DNA display. Genetic markers, placed in human ancestors by my people, drawing you to the seed worlds when you developed space travel. Mason felt dizzy with the revelation. Are you saying the Lumina manipulated human evolution? Made us come here? Not manipulation, protection. Nixala's eyes were intense. My people saw potential in yours, planted seeds in your genetic code, seeds that would one day lead you to places like this. She gestured around the chamber, places where our species could meet again, as equals. The idea was overwhelming. Mason sat down on a crystal bench, trying to process what he was hearing. That's why I can sense your thoughts. Why I'm changing. It's not just exposure to you. It was always in my DNA, waiting to be activated. Yes. Nixala sat beside him. You are becoming what humans were always meant to be. Partners to the Lumina. Before Mason could respond, a loud alarm sounded throughout the chamber. Red light pulsed along the walls. Nixala jumped to her feet and ran to a control panel. Crick ships, she said, her voice tight with tension. Many of them. They have found us. Mason joined her at the panel. A display showed the surface above them. Crick's ships were landing around the circle of trees. Warriors in dark armor poured out, weapons ready. How did they find us? Mason asked. The Citadel's activation, Nixala explained. It sent out a signal. I should have expected this. She began working the controls rapidly. We must complete the awakening sequence before they reach us. Awakening sequence? What does that do? The Citadel is more than a building, Mason. Her fingers flew over the controls. It is a ship. A very old, very powerful ship, buried here until needed. Hope surged through Mason. Can it take us away from here? Away from the Cricks? Yes, but it needs time to fully activate. She pointed to another display showing the staircase they had descended. They will be here soon. We must hold them off. Nixala moved to a wall covered with symbols. She pressed several in sequence, and a section of the wall slid open. Inside were weapons, long staffs made of the same crystal as the pillars. She handed one to Mason. These respond to Lumina biology, or to those connected to us. She showed him how to hold it. Focus your mind. Feel the connection. Mason wrapped his hands around the staff. At first, nothing happened. Then he felt a warmth spreading from the weapon into his arms. The crystal began to glow with blue light. It works, he said in surprise. You are more changed than you know, Nixala replied. She took a staff for herself. Come, we must guard the entrance. They positioned themselves at the bottom of the staircase. Above them, they could hear the sounds of the Cricks breaking through the surface entrance. Nixala's skin darkened, hardening into its battle form. Mason felt his own body tensing, senses sharpening. How long until the Citadel is ready? He asked. Minutes, maybe less. She looked at him, her silver eyes intense. Mason, if I fall, you must complete the sequence. The crystal pillar at the center. Place your hand on it and think of stars. It will understand. I'm not leaving without you, Mason insisted. This is bigger than either of us, she said firmly. The knowledge in this Citadel must not fall into Crick's hands. Promise me. Before Mason could answer, the first Crick's warriors appeared at the top of the stairs. Their dark armor seemed to absorb the light around them. They carried energy weapons that glowed with red fire. Nixala raised her staff. The crystal tip blazed with blue light, then fired a beam of energy that hit the lead warrior. He fell, tumbling down the stairs. The others fired back. Energy blasts hit the walls around Mason and Nixala. Mason raised his own staff, focusing his mind as Nixala had taught him. A beam of blue energy shot forth, hitting another warrior. The battle had begun. More Cricks poured down the stairs. Mason and Nixala fought side by side, their staffs blazing with light. Mason felt something new within himself, a strength and speed he had never known before. His movements flowed naturally, as if he had trained for this his whole life. Through their mental connection, he could feel Nixala's battle plan. They moved as one, covering each other, striking when the enemy least expected it. For a time they held the Cricks back, but more kept coming. A blast caught Mason in the shoulder, spinning him around. Pain flared hot and bright. Nixala moved to protect him, her staff whirling in a blur of light. The Citadel, she shouted over the noise of battle. Check the status. Mason stumbled back to the control panel. The displays showed progress bars, almost complete. Almost ready. A loud explosion shook the chamber. Part of the ceiling collapsed, blocking half of the staircase. But it also created a new entrance. Crick's warriors began dropping through the opening. They were surrounded. Mason fought his way back to Nixala's side. She had been hit several times, but her hardened skin had protected her from serious damage. We can't hold them much longer, Mason said, firing his staff at a Cricks who got too close. We don't need to, Nixala replied. She pointed to the floor beneath them. It had begun to vibrate. The blue light in the metal grew brighter. It's happening. A deep rumbling sound filled the chamber. The crystal pillars pulsed with light. On the control panel, all the progress bars reached completion. The Cricks seemed to realize something was happening. They pushed forward with renewed determination. A massive warrior, bigger than the others, forced his way through his own troops. His armor was decorated with symbols of rank. The Cricks commander. He raised a weapon unlike the others, a long blade that glowed with red energy. He pointed it at Nixala and spoke, his voice harsh and grating. He says I must surrender, Nixala translated, or they will kill you and take me by force. What do we do? Mason asked, keeping his staff aimed at the commander. We wait, Nixala said calmly. 3, 2, 1. The entire chamber lurched suddenly. Mason nearly lost his balance. The rumbling grew louder. Cracks appeared in the ceiling and dirt began to fall through. What's happening? Mason shouted over the noise. Nixala smiled. The Citadel rises. The Citadel ship rose through the clouds of Tarova 9, leaving the surface far below. Mason stood at a crystal window watching the planet shrink beneath them. The Cricks ships that had been searching the surface now turned to pursue them, black shapes against the orange sky. They're following us, he said to Nixala, who was working at the control panel. Expected, she replied, her fingers moving across the symbols. But they cannot match this ship's speed once we reach open space. The chamber had transformed. Crystal walls had rearranged themselves. New rooms had opened. The entire citadel hummed with power. Mason could feel it through the soles of his feet, a deep vibration that seemed alive. Can we contact anyone? Mason asked. Your people or mine? Nixila shook her head. Communication systems are damaged. Long sleep underground. She pointed to a display that showed red warning symbols. Many systems need repair. A sudden thought struck Mason. The research station. There might be survivors. He turned to Nixila with urgency in his voice. We saw the station destroyed, but some people might have escaped. We should look for them. Nixila hesitated. Dangerous. Crix will be watching. We can't just leave them, Mason insisted. They're my people. My friends. After a moment, Nixila nodded. You are right. She adjusted the controls. The ship banked smoothly, changing course. We scanned for human life signs. The ship's sensors swept the planet below. Displays showed maps of the terrain, highlighting areas of interest. Mason watched anxiously, hoping to see signs of survivors. A ping sounded from the control panel. Nixila touched a symbol and a section of the map enlarged. There, she said. Small group. Human biosigns. In mountains to south, relief flooded through Mason. Can we contact them? No, but can bring them here. Nixila worked the controls again. Ship has transport system. Lock onto human signatures. Bring them aboard. Mason felt a surge of hope. How many people? 7 life signs, Nixila replied. All human. She activated a sequence of symbols. In the center of the chamber, a circle of light appeared on the floor. The light grew brighter, then flashed. When it faded, 7 people stood there looking confused and frightened. Mason recognized them immediately. Scientists from the research station. Dr. Olivia Grant, the station's medical officer. Alan Park, the communications specialist. 5 others, all looking ragged and dirty as if they had been living rough for weeks. Mason, Dr. Grant said in disbelief. You're alive! We thought everyone was dead, Mason replied, moving toward them. How did you survive? We were on a field expedition when the attack happened, Dr. Grant explained. We saw the station destroyed from a distance. We've been hiding in the mountains ever since, living off the land. The survivors looked around in amazement at the crystal chamber. Then they saw Nixila. Several reached for weapons they didn't have. It's okay, Mason said quickly, stepping between them and Nixila. She's a friend. She saved my life. This is her ship. Her ship? Alan Park said skeptically. What is this place? What's going on, Mason? Before Mason could explain, the ship shuddered. Warning symbols flashed across the control panels. Nixila moved quickly to check them. Crix weapons, she said tensely. They fire on us. Another impact rocked the ship. The lights flickered briefly. The survivors cried out in alarm. Can we fight back? Mason asked, joining Nixila at the controls. Yes, but not while in atmosphere. She pointed to a display showing their altitude. Need to reach space first. The ship accelerated, climbing faster. The sky outside the windows darkened from orange to deep blue, then to black sprinkled with stars. But the Crix ships followed, firing continuously. Weapons range, Nixila announced. She touched several symbols in sequence. Outside, beams of blue energy shot from the Citadel ship, striking 2 of the pursuing Crix vessels. They exploded in silence, fragments scattering into space. The remaining Crix ships fell back but still followed. They call for reinforcements, Nixila said, reading a display. More ships coming. We must break orbit now. She set a course away from the planet. The stars outside began to shift as the ship gained speed. Mason turned to the survivors, who were watching in a mixture of fear and awe. I need to explain what's happening, he told them. Quickly, he summarized the events of the past month. His rescue of Nixila, their crash, their discovery of the Citadel, and the threat the Crix posed to both their species. So this ship is ancient alien technology? Dr. Grant asked when he finished. And it's been buried on Terova 9 for thousands of years? Yes, Mason confirmed. And there are more planets like it. Seed worlds, Nixila calls them. Places prepared by her people long ago. Alan Park looked skeptical. And we're supposed to believe that her people manipulated human DNA? Guided our evolution? I know it sounds incredible, Mason admitted. But I've experienced it myself. I'm changing. developing abilities I never had before. To demonstrate, he reached out with his mind, touching Park's thoughts lightly. The man jumped in surprise. What was that? He demanded. A telepathic contact, Mason explained. I can sense emotions now. Sometimes thoughts. It's part of the connection between humans and Lumina that was built into our DNA thousands of years ago. The survivors looked at each other uncertainly. This was a lot to accept all at once, but they had just been transported aboard an alien ship that was now fleeing into space. Their world had already been turned upside down. Another impact rocked the ship. Harder this time. The lights dimmed momentarily. Main power failing, Nixala reported, her voice tight with concern. Too many hits. Repairs incomplete. Mason joined her at the controls. Through their mental connection, he could sense what needed to be done, though he didn't understand the symbols. What can I do? He asked. Help me reroute power, she said. Place your hands here and here. She guided his hands to specific points on the control panel. Focus your mind. Feel the ship. Mason closed his eyes and concentrated. He felt a tingling sensation in his palms, then a rush of energy flowing through him. He was connecting with the ship's systems, becoming a conduit for power. It's working, Nixala said. Power levels rising. The ship accelerated again, pulling away from the pursuing Krix vessels. For a moment, it seemed they might escape. Then a new alert sounded. Nixala's expression grew grim. Large Krix ship ahead, she said. Very large. Command vessel. On the display, Mason saw it. A massive black ship, many times the size of the smaller vessels that had been chasing them. It moved to block their path. Can we go around it? Mason asked. No time, Nixala replied. They surround us now. It was true. The smaller Krix ships had spread out, forming a net that was closing around them. The Citadel ship slowed, then stopped, trapped between its pursuers. What do we do? Dr. Grant asked, fear evident in her voice. Nixala was silent for a long moment, her silver eyes fixed on the displays. Then she turned to Mason. There is one option, she said quietly. The network. The transportation network you told me about? Mason asked. I thought it was damaged. It is. But the Citadel remembers the pathways. She looked at the displays showing the Krix ships closing in. It is dangerous. Systems not fully awakened. But our only chance, what are the risks? Mason asked. Power drain could be fatal to ship, Nixala admitted. And she hesitated. The network requires a guide, a living consciousness to navigate the pathways. Mason understood immediately. You would have to guide us. Yes, connect fully to ship systems. Her eyes met his. Dangerous for me, too. Before Mason could respond, the ship shuddered violently. Warning symbols flashed across every display. The Krix command ship had fired some kind of energy beam that was now holding them in place. They try to board us, Nixala said urgently. We have no time left. Mason made the decision. Do it. Activate the network. Nixala nodded once, then moved to the crystal pillar at the center of the chamber. She placed both hands on it and closed her eyes. The crystal began to glow brighter, pulsing with blue light that spread throughout the ship. What's happening? Alan Park asked, backing away nervously. She's connecting with the ship, Mason explained, becoming part of it to guide us through the network. The light grew blinding. Nixala's body seemed to become translucent, energy flowing through her into the crystal pillar. Her face showed strain, pain even, but she maintained the connection. Outside the windows, space itself seemed to bend. Stars stretched into lines of light. A tunnel of energy formed in front of the ship, a pathway leading somewhere beyond normal space. The ship lurched forward, breaking free of the Krix energy beam. It entered the tunnel of light. The sensation was strange. Mason felt as if he was being pulled apart and put back together again. The survivors cried out in alarm. Then as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The ship emerged from the tunnel into normal space again. Through the windows, Mason saw unfamiliar stars. A new system. They had escaped, but at what cost? Nixala had collapsed beside the crystal pillar. Mason ran to her side. Her skin was pale, almost white instead of its normal blue. She was barely breathing. Nixala. Mason cradled her head. What's wrong? What happened? Her eyes opened slightly. Too much. Power drain. Her voice was weak. Ship needs consciousness to maintain functions.